Okay, so we will start. Uh, First of all, let me welcome Anjali from Advaita Academy. Thanks to their good offices, we are trying to live webcast this lecture. So today we are just trying. If it works out, we have created a YouTube channel called Practical Vedanta IAMB. Last week's thing we recorded it and then put it. The idea is if this works, courtesy Advaita Academy, we will live stream. So you will find Practical Vedanta IAMB live stream will also be there. There you can, so that if more people are interested, they will do that. So that's the idea. Okay, so we will start. Till last week we saw chapter 8, and this week we will see chapter 9. Start this week, hopefully we will continue it next week to the extent required. As you may remember, the second triplet of Bhagavad Gita is about Tat Padartha. It is about that. The Tvam Padartha is the first 6 chapters. It is about you in the context of work. And the second 6 chapters in Bhagavad Gita is Tat Padartha, that, about that ultimate principle. So if you quickly recollect, the entire 6 chapters have flown out of one shloka, which is the 7th shloka in chapter 7. Matta parataram na anyat asti dhananjaya mayi sarvamitam protam sutre manigana iva. So the entire creation, the connection between Jiva, Jagat and Ishvara, the law of conservation of divinity, whatever you call, all of them are contained in that shloka, where Krishna says, Matta parataram na anyat kinchidasti dhananjaya. There is nothing, not a speck of dust other than me that you can see. Moment such a claim has been made, it's now very important to show how is it possible. What is this law of conservation of divinity? Which means you have to explain who am I? How am I part of divinity? How are you going to explain that the whole earth is part of divinity, the whole Jagat, not just earth, the universe, the cosmos is part of divinity, and there is a divinity which is separate from this, or it is part of this. So this is the central question, which is the subject matter for the second triplet. How do you connect these three? Jiva, Jagat and the Ishvara, and how do you actually say all of them are nothing but divinity? So that's why we set on. So in the 12th shloka in chapter 7, he said some idea which we will see again in chapter 9 again. Na teshu te aham, natu aham teshu te mai. That's what he says. I am not in that, but they are all in me. So the same shloka is there in chapter 9. Then he talked about 4 types of bhaktas. He said Artha Bhakti and Arthartha Bhakti, Jijnasa Bhakti and Jnani. All that. So these are all part of chapter 7. Now this story has to be weaved. We cannot just leave it by saying the whole world is nothing but nothing other than me you will see in this world. Having made that statement, that has to be articulated in greater detail. So that is where we saw chapter 8, which is Akshara Brahma Yoga, where he talked about the creation process. Now we have to get into everything. So he started talking about the creation process. He said, there is a very important shloka in the creation process. He said, A Brahma Bonan Lokaha Punaravartino Arjuna. From Brahma to everything that you see will all go through a process of cycle of existence and non-existence. So the creation process was explained in chapter 8. Because now you have to say, who are you? Where did you come from? Where did you go? And what is this connection? So that is where the chapter ended with Uttarayana and Dakshinayana. So these are figurative forms. You cannot take a literal meaning of Uttarayana as a path in which the magnetic needle is going north, so therefore let us start walking. that is a very figurative understanding. There is a deeper meaning. It says there are two choices that we can make in our life, and for convenience of understanding, there is a tag called Uttarayana, there is a tag called Dakshinayana. So people will ask, then why did Bhishmacharya actually waited if it is simply a tag? Because Bhishmacharya waited, we are discussing it 3,500 years later. That tag, that symbolism must be required to remember what is behind that symbolism. So a person of great standing must show to that symbolic understanding of Uttarayana. That is what he did. He did not need this southern path and northern path, but because he did it, it assumed a lot of importance. We wanted to ask, what is this Uttarayana? And what is this Dakshinayana? There are 2-3 very nice shlokas in chapter 8, which we must remember. 7th shloka is at Tasmat Sarveshu Kaleshu Mam Anusmara Yudhyacha Mayarpita Mano Buddhihi Mameva Yeshyasi Nashamshaya. He said all the time, Tasmat Sarveshu Kaleshu, 24/7 think of me, Yudhyacha, fight this life, whatever it means. Face the challenges in life, whatever it means, remember me 24/7. You will reach me. Because now you have to connect the Jiva to the Jagat to the Ishvara. So many ideas have to be told. So he said, that's why he brought this idea of thinking of me, Prayana Kalepi Mam Smaran. Remember me at the time of death. Then in a few shlokas in chapter 8 said, remember me at the time of death will happen only if you have lifelong exercise of doing it. All that he said. So he said, Tasma Sarveshu Kaleshu Mam Anusmara Yudhyacha. In the 14th shloka, he said, Tasyaham Sulabaha Parthaha Nitya Yuktasya Yogina. One who is a Nitya Yukta, one who is very composed, 24/7, thinking of me, despite engaging in the world of activities that we are engaging. Tasyaham Sulabaha. It's much easy to reach me. Hey Partha. That's what he said. He ended the chapter, if you remember, he ended the chapter with the same message. He said, Tasmat Sarveshu Kaleshu Yoga Yukto Bhavarjana. Hey Arjuna, I have said all these. I have said northern path, southern path. I said everybody will go through the path of destruction, cycle of birth and death. Therefore you remember me. Because at the beginning of the chapter itself, he said, if you remember me, you will reach me. And you don't get into the cycle of birth and death. That's why he ended the chapter by saying, Tasmat Sarveshu Kaleshu Yoga Yukto Arjuna Bhava. That's how he ended the chapter. And of course there was one more shloka, Dana, Japa, Yajna, all those cannot reach you, but think about me. So what is it that Sri Krishna is saying? He said, there is Jiva, Jagat and Ishvara are same. But then this knowledge is not a knowledge to read, memorize and commit in memory. This knowledge must be realized. Now knowing something is just one part of the story. Being that, it is from state of knowing to state of being. So if you have to become like that, the question is, how do I know Jiva, Jagat and Ishvara are same? It is not an examination in which we are going to write and get marks 100 on 100. That I wrote correctly a multiple choice question, I correctly answered. That Jiva, Jagat and Ishvara. That is not what it is. That's why chapter 7 was called Jnana, Vijnana Yoga. Jnana is knowledge, Vijnana is realized knowledge. Knowledge becomes way of your thinking and you become of that. How do we get it? That's why he introduced Bhakti. So this second triplet, he says, how does this knowledge become a realized knowledge? The only way, I will tell you how it will become a realized knowledge. Bhakta, being a Bhakta. The tool for you to realize it is have Bhakti. So that is another stream of thought he started. That's why he said, Chaturvidan Bhakta. He said, Vasudevaha Sarvamitam Samhatma, Bahunam Janmanam Ante. Jnani Mam Prapadyate Vasudevaha Sarvamitam Samahatma Sudurlabha. He said this thinking comes for a Jnani, and that Jnani, he is saying, what is the tool? How do I get from a knowledge to a realized knowledge? Knowledge is all on a piece of paper, maybe committed in the memory. But please understand, this memory is mortal. Prajnana is not mortal. Everything else is mortal. In chapter 13 we will see. Kshetra Kshetrajna Yoga, we have the science of what is mortal and what is immortal. We will see it. If you commit it to memory, once this memory is gone, that is gone. It is like read-only memory. You switch off, everything is gone. Prajnana, they say Prajnanam Brahma. So how do you get from the memory as a state? God is a statement of fact for us, not a reality for us. There's the difference between God being a statement of fact and God being reality. So how do you go to a stage of knowing about God and being in God? That's where he introduced the notion of bhakti. So this chapter is about bhakti. This chapter is the last 10-15 slokas are heights of bhakti, chapter 9. Pinnacle of bhakti. There's no better way you can understand bhakti than these slokas if we properly understand it. So that is what chapter 9 is. So he continues chapter 9. First of all, with the thought, he adds some more into the creation process. If we don't understand creation process, if we don't understand birth and death, then Jiva, Jagat, Ishvara connection will be lost. And this should be understood not as a piece of knowledge, but as a matter of anubhuti. Aparoksha anubhuti, not paroksha anubhuti. It should be immediate. It must be realization. That's why the creation process is inevitable. Because we believe in karma, janma, punarjanma. We believe in it. So this whole equation must be connected properly. That's why the creation process came in chapter 8. He continues it with the first 10 shlokas, then returns to bhakti. He now starts telling how these people in the world are. Who are all bhaktas, who are all non-bhaktas. Slowly he gets it. There's a separate chapter on Daivasura Sampat where some of these ideas are also expanded in some more detail. So this chapter is Navamodhyayaha, Raja Vidya Raja Guhya Yoga. It's a very nice special name, Raja Vidya and Raja Guhya. That is the name of this chapter. So in a nutshell, this chapter has 34 shlokas and it starts with an opening remark. First 2 shlokas, Sri Krishna gives an opening remark where he is saying, I am now going to tell you this Raja Vidya and Raja Guhya. I will tell you that. That's what he is saying. He also adds some attributes. He says, Pratyaksha Avagamam, so Susukam, Dharmyam, all that he is saying. And there is one reference in chapter 4, I want to bring it to connect this, what he is saying here. Then the shloka 3 to 15 is on birth and death cycle because it is extremely important to understand the creation process. Every Upanishad has it. In Taittiriya Upanishad, the second, Bhrigavalli, it says, Brahmanandavalli, it says, Satapo tapyata, Satapas taptva, Idagum sarvam asrijata. This principle which was unmanifested deeply contemplated the idea of creation. Satapo tapyata, Satapas taptva, Idagum sarvam, Idam sarvam asrijata. It created this world of multiplicity. That's what it said. And then what did it do? It said, Tadeva anupravishat. It anupravishat. It then said, let me enter into all of this. It is not Jada Shakti. The Chik Shakti came into it. It's not only Jada Shakti. It said, Tadeva anupravishat. Tadeva anupravishat. Tadanupravishya, having entered into it. So it said, let me create this world of multiplicity. Then it said, let me enter into it. Then what did it do? It created the world of duality. It said, Satchatyacha bhavat. It said it became truth and not everything it manifested. This is the only, Sanatana Dharma is the only religion, I think even generally the Eastern religions, not just the Sanatana Dharma. The Eastern religions differ from the Semitic religions that evil is part of godliness. In chapter 11 he is going to show it so vividly. Chapter 11 is so interesting. The number of shlokas in Virat Darshan of this divine, the number of shlokas showing evil is more than the number of shlokas showing good. You can just take a head count, sloka count and see. Because we want to say everything. Sat, Asat, everything it became. Niruptancha, Niruptancha, Niruptam and Aniruptam, that which can be determined, that which cannot be determined. Nilayanancha, Nilayanancha, Satyancha, Nritamcha, Satyam, Abhavat, Satyam, Asatyam, Anritam, Nritam, everything. It pervaded into everything. Only then, Matta Parataram Na Anyat Kinjidasti Dhananjaya will make sense. If there is nothing other than a speck of dust, then evil must be God. Because only then this God particle theory will work. So this creation process must be understood. There is a profound model there of connecting everything in the world. That is what it is trying to do. So he continues on that. Because he talked about Paraprakriti and Aparaprakriti in chapter 7. He picks it up here and little bit more. Very nice. There is even a nice management principle here. Shloka 7 to 10 I just want to touch on. The greatness of ancient Indian history, I keep telling again and again, is ideas are as profound for spiritual thinking, self-evolution. Ideas are very useful for Vyavahara also. We can even clean up our day-to-day activities. So-called management can also become a little better. Although the stated objective was not that, but it is all-encompassing. Then he talks about Bhakti, in which he talks about, in fact, he talks about Asuras and Bhaktas. First reference comes here, and then there is a separate chapter in which this is dealt in great detail. But there is a reference made here. How people can miss the essence, and so they lose at the end of the day and start the game all over. All those are here, and then gets into this grandeur of Bhakti. These slokas are extremely important. Only then chapter 10 and 11 can make any sense. In fact, this whole build-up of this idea that the world is nothing but divinity at every direction, every moment and every occasion that you turn. It's only divinity. If that idea does not sink into us, we will never be able to appreciate Vibhuti Yoga, which is chapter 10, and Vishwarupa Darshan, which is 11, because unless you understand it, you will never appreciate what is happening. But it's a beautiful order in which he is getting that idea. So in order to prepare that, he brings some beautiful ideas about Bhakti in this chapter, and only to visit Bhakti after showing the Vibhuti and the Virat Darshan. In chapter 12, there is a Bhakti Yoga, short, sweet chapter, in which he returns to this idea. So let's see some of the shlokas. So chapter 9 starts with the opening remarks of Sri Krishna. Shri Bhagavan Vacha Idam tu te guhyatamam pravakshyami anasuyave Jnanam vijnana sahitam Yat jnatva mokshyase ashubhat. So he says, let me now tell you, and tell you what? I'll tell you something which is guhyatamam. See, guhya is secret. Guhya has three meanings. There are three meanings to guhya. One is secret, another is inaccessible, third is profound. There are three meanings. Something that is profound is also called guhya. Something which is inaccessible is also guhya. I mean, in common parlance we use it actually. Something which is secret. Secret and inaccessible are in a way related. But there is a difference. Because about Brahma Jnana, you can read any amount. It is actually, not secret, but it is inaccessible. It has not gone. You have all read thoroughly, and I can keep a quiz, I will get 100 and 100. So it is inaccessible in that sense. So he says, it is Guhyatamam, it is profound. It is profound. It is secretive because it doesn't, you don't get it just like that. Secretive is not to hide. It is, little effort is required. Maybe a lot of effort is required to get it. Although it is very much with someone. So that's why he said Guhyatamam. See, this Tama is a superlative in Sanskrit. Tara is comparative. Tama is superlative. So it is Guhyatama. It is the profoundest or the most secretive or the most inaccessible for several reasons. Because it is not obvious. What is the central reason? Central reason is this knowledge is not accessible like any knowledge that is accessible to us. How do you get knowledge in the world? To get knowledge in the world, you need only Aparaprakriti. You need pancha indriyas, buddhi, manas and ahankara, you will get any knowledge. That's all you need. If I have to know about something, see more and more, you see it and get it. Hear more and more, or read, do manana, you memorize, copy, commit it to memory, that's how you get knowledge. This knowledge is not like that. This knowledge is not accessible through indriyas. Which means all these gadgets you are first throw. These gadgets are of no use. That is why it is Gukhyatama. So the means of getting it is, the reason is, it is not getting, it is becoming. So when you say, with the light, you can see all the lights. How can we see light itself? How can the light see itself? Because we are all Swayam Prakashas. That's why you switch off everything pitch dark. You may not know who is there, but we know where you are. Because we are Swayam Prakashas. Light is inherent in us. We need light only to get anything other than so-called I. That I is not this body. That I is the Sukshma. But how do you know I itself? You don't need any of these indriyas. That's why you did not need light, you did not need sound. If you need to know somebody is there, sound will be useful. To know yourself, you need nothing. All indriyas are switched off. That's why the means of knowing it is a little different. Swami Dayananda says in this book I was reading, he says E equal to MC square, you can write 1,000 times. Thoroughly memorize it, but you don't know, I don't know honestly what is E equal to MC square. Because that jnana is only a jnana, not a vijnana. The Nobel laureate in particle physics may actually, when he say E equal to MC square, he will live in E equal to MC square. I don't even know what it is, but I got full marks in science. That is what it is. So that knowledge is not we are talking. The knower has to be realized. It's not even known, it is realized. You realize yourself. So it is Gukhyatama. It is profound, little difficult, right? Then Anasuya, he calls Arjuna as Asuya. Simple meaning of Asuya is, I cannot tolerate the good properties that I find in somebody. That's called Asuya. I don't have that strength in myself that somebody has a very good, Uttama Guna. Asuya is that. In fact, he is going to talk about 20 values in chapter 13. Amanitvam, Adambitvam, Ahimsa, Kshanti Rajav, Acharyopasam, like that it goes. Stairyam, Atma Vinigraha. But before all that, first starting for self-evolution, we can't have Asuya. And that's a very, very low level idea. Many of us have that problem. That means the character has not flowered yet. If somebody has a very good attribute, fine. God has been kind, that's alright. The person who is very bothered about it is actually having Asuya. He says Anasuya because he says this is very important. This is the first flowering of the character. First flowering of the character is, it doesn't matter just because I don't have, somebody has, if I start feeling bad about it, that is Asuya. So that's why he has put that adjective here, Anasuya, for Arjuna. So it is not jnana, it is jnana vijnana sahita. It's not theoretical knowledge, it is realized knowledge. Aparoksha anubhuti. I have an immediate realization of that idea. Immediate realization of God is something we have to ask, what is it? Because our idea of God is very external. It is not internal, it is very external. How do you know? From behavior we can find out for ourselves. If it is internal, we behave in a particular way. If it is external, we behave in a particular way. So here he talks about jnana vijnana sahitam. This knowledge is not just jnana. That's why he is connecting to chapter 7. It's called jnana vijnana yoga in that chapter. Knowledge and realized knowledge. Knowledge may be a first step, but that's not the last step. Realized knowledge, even in common parlance, MBA degree is only a first step. Your ability to live through the concepts and demonstrate it in work is called Vijnana of MBA. The degree and first job is a good way to start, but you will go nowhere with that. Without Vijnana, that's why in learning organization, if you read books on learning organization, they talk about what is called tacit knowledge, not explicit knowledge. Explicit knowledge is what is available outside. You can read about many things. Tacit knowledge is it has gone in and then it has changed you. So operations management I can read, But I can practice operation management in a particular way. That is Vijnana of operations. Reading is the Jnana of operations. So that's the idea. So we need to have the Vijnana. That is what it is. Having known that, Yat Jnatva, you will be liberated of Ashubha. Ashubha is what? Fear. In fact, this imperfect knowledge can create a whole lot of complexities for us. Peace of mind, tension. Because we don't know what is Nitya and Anitya. We don't know, what is Kshetra and what is... There are very clear-cut ideas of what is permanent and what is not permanent. We map non-permanent things into a domain of permanence and create a lot of problems for us. We map permanent things, non-permanent things, and then we destroy ourselves in the process. Cross-mapping, it's called, Arishankara calls it as Adhyasa. It cross-maps. Wrong things are mapped onto the wrong domain. That is why we get Ashubha. So how do you get Shubha then? How do you get out of all these? This Avarna, this layer must go. And how will that layer go? That layer goes only when you have Vijnana of Jnana followed by Vijnana. So that is what he says here. He says, Rajavidya Rajaguhyam Pavitram Idam Uttamam Pratyakshagamam Dharmyam Susukam Kartum Avyayam. He puts a lot of adjectives to how can you attain this knowledge. That's what he is addressing here. First of all, he calls it as Rajavidya. This Vidya is a Rajavidya. See, there are two meanings for Rajavidya. The meaning, the word Raja, comes from a Sanskrit root called Raj. Raj means Raj. In fact, that's how Rajata is also coming, silver. Raj, it comes from the Sanskrit root Raj. Raj means to shine. The Raja must be shining. He cannot be somebody whom we will be anxiously waiting to get out. He can never be a Raja. Rajate, virajate iti Raja. That who is shining in glory, he is called a Raja. And silver is called Rajat because it is shining. Rajate iti Rajat. They all come from the root Raj. So this Vidya is a shining Vidya. That's the one meaning. Because that is the ultimate. That can sort out a lots of... Just to give you an idea, if a company had a very unambiguous vision, I am just taking an example because unless we map it to something which we know, sometimes we don't know how to connect it. Suppose there is a company which says, come what may, I will not do anything which will go against being in a very sustainable world in which I should operate. Suppose company has an unambiguous clarity on that. Whatever I do, they may be manufacturing, they may be offering some service, it doesn't matter. There may be 100 things they may be doing. I am not coming to the lower level. I am now going to level 1, called the vision. If the company says, my vision is I will be at peace and rhythm with nature, that will clarify, should I develop this product or not? Should I, if there are two choices, should I do this product line or that product line? Everything will be clarified if you have absolute clarity on the first one. So that vision is a Rajavidya for that company. Equivalent. An unambiguous, clear-cut vision will resolve hundreds of trade-offs which are of day-to-day nature, once in 2 years, once in 5 years, decisions they take, day-to-day decisions they take, all the vyavaharas they do in the name of whatever they do, how do you resolve conflict, what is right to do and what is wrong to do, 1,000 questions. All those questions will be unambiguously answered if the first point is clear. Our life is exactly like that. If this Vidya we have, it will clarify. That is the confusion we are going through. That is why we have Ashubha. If you have absolute clarity on who you are and what is your goal of life, where did you come from and where are you going, that it's like our personal vision. If you get the personal vision, your day-to-day activities you will have no difficulty in resolving. It's a great sant. Many of things that they do, we may actually laugh at because we are not sitting in that plane of clarity. We are operating at a lower level, so we are a bundle of conflict. Today we will do something, we say, chalta hai. No, this is a small adjustment I am making, it is alright. Why are we doing it? Because we don't know what the big puzzle is not in front of us. If that big jigsaw puzzle is very unambiguously obtained, then the avarna goes, lots of confusions will go. That's the part this is taking. That's why it's called Raja Vidya and Raja Guhya. So the word Raja is used to say it is a very, very celebrated one, or it is very profound. I mean, same idea. Raja Guhya is nothing but Guhyatama. Same reason. And which shines by itself, because this is the ultimate thing which can clarify several things about life. Lots of things. This company might decide, should I sell this and get 1 crore profit or not? If it is against the very fundamental grain of what they want to do, they will have no difficulty in saying we are not doing. But if you have no clarity of what is the grain of my company, you today do something, tomorrow you do something, you go back and forth, you get confused, you feel sorry, you feel apologetic, you feel happy, the whole mix of things will happen. Same thing. So that is what it is. It is Raja Guhyam, Raja Vidya. It is Pavitram. Because this is this pristine, clear, pure knowledge for which we should aim for. Because that has the power to clean up. Adi Shankara in his Bhashya says that this knowledge, no matter how many thousands and thousands of years of ignorance you went through, it will be washed off once you get it. It's like this story which I told earlier also. There is one beggar sitting on a wooden box and begging in front of a temple. So this one Swamiji came and this one sannyasi came. So the beggar asked for alms. Sannyasi said, I am also supposed to beg, so I may not be able to give you something. But I want to tell you something. Why don't you open this box and see what is inside? So the beggar said, no sir, we are all hereditary beggars. My grandfather also sat on the same wooden dabba. My father also sat. I am also sitting. My son is on his way. We will all sit here. Swamiji said one sentence and went into the temple. He said, my dear brother, I want to tell you, whether you sat on it for 1 year or 1 million years, until you open and see what is inside, you may not know what it is. Then he went away. So this first few days nothing happened, but this sentence was really churning this person. This beggar who was sitting in front of the temple. One day he opened it. The moment he opened it, he became instant rich. He never became instant rich. He was ignorant of his richness. He never became rich. Richness was already there. So this Raja Vidya is already there. The moment you know it, the status changes. That's why it doesn't matter how many years of ignorance, then it has no relationship to that. Moment that knowledge comes, that's why it is Pavitra. That's why it will wash off. It doesn't matter how long a bag you carried. It will wash it off. The moment he opened it, he became rich. He was rich. He will be rich provided he is able to vouchsafe it. He is rich, but he was simply not aware of it. This is Raja Vidya is the wooden box which you are yet to open. That is the idea. That's why Pavitram, Idam Uttamam. Then he said, Pratyaksha Avagamam. This can be realized directly. It is not millions of light years away. It is not some Vaikunta or some Kailasha or some Brahmaloka or something which is several million light years. You have to see it in a movie with a very smoky thing and floating bed and no, none of that. They are all some ways of character. It is here with you. Nihitam Guhayam Parame Vyoman. That's what it says. Shruti says Parame Vyoman. It is spread everywhere. Nihitam Guhayam. It is innermost cave, it is there. Chetak Kuhare Panchamukosti Mekuto Bihi. In Shivananda Lahiri, Shankaracharya says, in this cave called Chetas, there is a Panchamukha sitting. Where is my fear? That's what he says. So, Nihitam Guhayam Parame Vyoman is what Shruti says. So, it is Pratyaksham. It is not second grade learning. It is not experience that you said I have to not. That may be starting point. There are only the process, stages in the process. It is Pratyaksha Avagamam. And there lies the greatest hope. It is Pratyaksha Avagamam. Dharmyam. It is in line with Dharma. The entire Purva Mimamsa says how do you make a clean living. Once you win that, then there is a Uttara Mimamsa which says it's all part of the Dharma. So this is inconsistent with the set of Dharmas codified. That's why Dharmyam. Susukam kartum. It's much easy to do. It's just that we are not thinking about this idea of opening this box. We want to eternally sit on it. And I heard another story. This is a very interesting story. It's beautifully described where we are in a state of ignorance. The story goes like this. There is one village in which everybody is born only with a headache. It's a very jovial story, but it conveys this idea. Everybody is born only with a headache. There is one boy who was born without a headache. Actually, that is the real state. There is one boy who is born without a headache. This whole village was very upset. There is something seriously wrong. They are very worldly people. That's why sannyasi in his life or Avatara Purusha's life, they will be outcast, they will be good for nothing, they will be branded useless, people will make effort to kill them. Correct? Socrates was given poison. No? And because he said things which were different. When his Shishya asked him, after you are dead, what do I do about you? For which he replied, you cast the real eye before you me to answer this question to you. So they are all very unusual people. Society thinks they are. So in this village, this fellow was born without headache. So now it was everybody's headache now. Somehow had to get a headache for him. They went to a doctor, can you do something and then get a headache? That is what we are doing. It is very simple. If you don't have a headache, that's a good thing. So now we are all to find out how do you reach a stage where we are rid of headache. It's a very jovial kind of an idea, but the thing is that natural state is something which we have forgotten. We are in some other state and we think that is the natural state. He says, no, it is sukam kartum avyayam. This knowledge, once you get this knowledge, anubhava, then you can throw your brain, you can be destroyed, you can die. This will not go. It is avyayam. You can sleep and get up, this consciousness will not go. Whereas anything which is part of your mortal remains, which is manas, buddhi, ahankar, pancha karmendriyas, pancha jnanendriyas, that has a tendency to become jaya. This is avyaya, because it is anubhuti. Your experience can never be taken away from you. And when you die, our model says it will be carried like what is called vasana and it is taken. The karana sharira takes it and carries it and brings it back. So it can never go. That's why it is avyayam. Good or bad vasanas. Vasanas are with you always. And modern management theory has given a name for that also. It's called resource-based view in strategy. It's called path dependence. Where you go is a function of what you travel. That is exactly what karma theory said. Our karma theory said where you can go forward is a function of what you carried. Where you came from. Exactly the same idea. Michael Hammer and all these people were, Prahalad and all these Hammer are putting this nice theory. They are all part of our karma theory. Sanchita karma is the path dependence. If I had to use management word to talk about it, that's the same idea. But it is pratyaksha avagamam. That is what really we need to understand. That lies the source of motivation. So what is this pratyaksha avagamam and dharmyam? First of all, very clearly Krishna says magic and mystery has nothing to do with Vedantic. That's why I call this practical Vedanta. There is no magic or mystery. If you can experience, where is the scope for magic? It is your personalized anubhava. My anubhava is of no use for you. Your anubhava is no use for somebody else. It is your own anubhava. That's why there is no room for magic or mystery. It's not a mysterious thing. You don't have to think it is something which you have to get it in. Somebody is saying you read, you will get it. It is your own experience, yes.
But experience is a function of your mind, right?
Yes.
So it is still not the real knowledge.
So it evolves over time. So through mind, see, the only apparatus we have are the indriyas. So that's why I say we have to do what is called bootstrapping. We have to use our own thing and then make it irrelevant and move forward. That's what bootstrapping technique is in a computer. You have to use some of the gadgets in the machine itself to go up. So we will ultimately use the indriyas. We will make it more and more. The indriyas are very gross now. We will make it subtle. We are not able to bring that kind of resolution. That resolution comes through satsanga. That resolution comes through bhakti. So it is that we are making it so subtle, it starts picking those feeble signals. After some time the signal transform you forget the apparatus. It's a process. We'll use that. With that only we'll go. That's why in chapter 6, Krishna said, Uttaret Atmana Atmanam Na Atmanam Avasade Atmaiva Bandhuhu Atmanam Atmaiva Ripuratmana. Your mind is the only one which will help you to go either ways. So that's a training. That's a question of how do you prepare. And a stage will come when you will say the mind is irrelevant. Until then you have to call the mind argument.
Also the mind is in a projective mode always. Because outside.
No, so as it becomes subtle and subtle and subtle,
when you get,
starts
when you
inward.
make it inject inside, it will get this kind of knowledge.
It's a process in which it happens. So every person can, that's why Pratyaksha says what? You can bring all, Varnashrama Dharma, they are of no use for Vedanta. Varnashrama Dharma is very important for Vyavahara. When you organize a society, you need span of control, you need managers and class 4 employees. Everything is required. Don't bring samatva, all that there. Vyavahara, you cannot say, all are same. It will become utter chaos. But in Ashraya, when you contemplate for the world within, you should bring samatva. For the world outside, you have to bring differences, because that's the only way you can organize things. So, we don't have, so if you are really into understanding right Vedanta, you will understand Varnashrama Dharma is an irrelevant discussion at all here. It may be useful only for a certain reason. After that, it may not be required. That's why everybody, in fact, the last few slokas, you will see spirituality is everybody's birthright. He will put it so nicely. Krishna will put in this chapter so beautifully, spirituality is everybody's birthright. You don't have to bring the other caste certificate and income certificate at all for Vedanta. He can be whatever in the world of Vyavahara, but he can be a much evolved person when it comes to reflection, understanding world, who am I, what is the connection. That has nothing to do with my demographic status. It has nothing to do with my sex. It has nothing to do with my religion or my Varnashrama Dharma. They are all for Vyavahara. That's very, very important for us to understand. I mean, we need that. When you play that game, you better do it that way, otherwise it will be chaos. But when you reflect on larger principles, they have no role. You can realize the truth as you realize any pratyaksha vastu. Right? That's what, Ramakrishna, when Vivekananda asked Ramakrishna, have you seen God? He said, I have seen God and much closer than what I have seen you. That is the pratyaksha anubhava. That remains of this idea. Vivekananda said the same thing when somebody asked. So that is what it is. And so therefore heaven is not millions of, this notion of heaven and all those are different. This evolution and amritatva is different from Swarga. Swarga is a holiday timeshare, you have to come back. After the credit is over, you have to come back. Whereas amritatva is release. So it's not some millions of light years away. These are all, initially some stories are all maybe required to little bit make us a little more interested in doing right things, and beyond that it is of no use. Let's leave it and graduate to the next level of thinking and so on. And we are truly capable. That's why pratyaksham avagamam for us. That's what he said in chapter 4, 10th sloka. Bahavaha vitaraga bayakrodaha manmaya maham upashitaha bahavo jnana tapasa puta madbhavam agataha. He said bahavaha agataha madbhavam. It's not a ivory tower idea. Lots of people have come unto me. Krishna says, Bahavaha madbhavam agataha. That's what he said in chapter 4. That's the meaning of pratyaksham avagatam. You can realize it, understand it, experience it in a very pratyaksha, very personalized experience. That's what we should actually long for and hope one day we get it. Then he talks another very important principle, which is much later we see in chapter 17, 18 in a big way. He's talked about it in chapter 4 also. Shraddhavan labate jnanam, he said. Immediately in the next sloka he said, Ashraddha ajnanascha samshayatma vinashyati. He said both. He said Shraddhavan labate jnanam. Person who had Shraddha will get the pinnacle of knowledge. The next sloka he said, Ashraddha Ajnanascha. Samshayatma, a doubting mind will perish. The modern civilization is all about doubting everything because we don't believe in God. I was in US on 1st January 2000, everybody told US will shut down, Y2K. From 20th of December to 31st of December, I saw the whole thing out. Because I believe in God, so I was not bothered. I said, let anything happen. And all supermarkets put a no return policy for even diesel generators, and they paid a massive sale in US. Modern living, I am not telling in a joking way, modern living is characterized by not believing anybody, anything, and think I have to solve everything myself. That means we are inflicting trouble for ourselves. We will definitely land with hypertension and diabetes and we start gobbling pills. Shraddha is very, very important. I will, chapter 17 we will again see it. He says, Ashraddha danaha purushaha dharmasya asya parantapa aprapya mam nivartante mrityu samsara vatmani. He says, certain people who don't bring this wrong, to me, forget about Vedanta for the moment. Forget about Vedanta. Let us talk about Vyavahara. Without faith, you can't go an inch forward. First question is, when were you born? You have to only take faith, you don't know. Somebody said you were born on 20th, something. Please take it. How do you know? You don't know. It about 8 years later, somebody showed you, somebody conducted said, happy birthday, something, this child, what is this happy birthday? He said, you are born, I said, he doesn't even know the notion of calendar. Our birth itself is at stake if we don't have Shraddha. Please understand, so don't look down upon Shraddha. Your birth is at stake. Your parents are at least you can do DNA test and all that, but your birth is definitely at stake. You go to a doctor. The doctor says you have to tear open your heart and then cut something and throw it out. Better listen to you. Say, I will have to now, no, let me understand what. Never do it. Actually, very practical living happens only when you have Shraddha. I am very bothered by this modern thinking. Where did this come? The children are all told Shraddha and all blind belief. What? Without blind belief, you can't go one step forward. Better have. But our Shraddha said, whom should you believe on? Our Shraddha said, without belief, you can't go forward. But it also said, whom should you believe? In Taittiriya Upanishad, the first thing, Yukta ayukta aluksha dharmaka masyuhu yata te vartatra tatra varteram tata tatra varteta. Shishya, the Guru says, Shishya, you will have a lot of confusion in life. You may not know which way to go. I have taught you, but this will not solve all your problems. You get jnana, you don't have vijnana. So what should I do? He says, look at some learned people and see what they are doing. Do that. That is the last advice, this first chapter of Taittiriya Upanishad. He says, Aluksha dharma kamasyuhu yata tatra varteram tata tatra varteta. You see what they are doing. That may be the better method. So our Shastra said, without belief you can't go one step forward. Better have. If you say everything I know only I will accept, half the thing you are in trouble. You can't go one step forward in life. From there, same thing applies for Vedanta also. Without Shraddha system, you have to believe in Shruti. You should believe that Shruti is pramana for me. Some codified thing you understand, it is very open and it gives a variety of ideas actually. So he says those who don't have belief system, Shraddha to me is a raw belief system. And to me it is the most practical way of living. You have to be very intelligent where to put Shraddha. You cannot take the variable of Shraddha out of your life, but you should rather know how exactly to have developed Shraddha. Without that, life is hugely challenged. So he says, Purushaha, Ashraddhadanaha Purushaha, those who never understood this important principle of Shraddha on this Dharma, right? They don't have the belief system in this Dharma, which is Shruti Pramana. What will happen? Mam aprapya. They will not reach me. They will not get me. They will miss. They will just miss. They will not get me. And what they will do? Nivartante mrityu samsara vatmani. Vatmani is a whirlpool. And what is this whirlpool? Mrityu samsara. This whirlpool of ocean of death in which they keep going and coming. Chakar. Nivartante. That's what he said. Abrahma bonan lokaha punaravartino jana. That's what he said in chapter 8. Same thing. He says, why? Because if you don't develop belief system, you are challenging your own existence. You will be very challenged in life. That's why he said, Ashraddha Ajnanascha Samshayatma Vinashyati. In chapter 4 he said. And on the contrary, he said, Shraddhavan Labate Jnana. That's what he said in chapter 4, 32 and 33rd sloka. That's what he is reiterating here.
But so the root cause behind Shraddha can be divine blessing, or maybe it is possible with own effort.
Lots of these things happen only because Bhagavad Kripa. And you have to understand what is this Bhagavad Kripa. I mentioned it in one of the earlier class. Bhagavad, see, if you have taken a Janma to expend all the karmas, you can never run away from that. A prarabdha karma manufactures a particular body in a certain condition. You cannot run away from that. Now, then where is the role for Bhagavad Kripa and Guru Kripa? What is this Bhagavad Kripa and Guru Kripa? Two things it will do. First thing it will do is, it will help you go weather through it with the minimum amount of mental disturbance and distress and all that. That's the greatest thing. It will put you into this path. People say it sparked in my mind. Where did it spark from? In fact, lots of things, rational thing will come to a dead and it may not know how to answer.
So that Bhagavad Kripa, somebody is getting, somebody is not getting. Is it out of lottery or it is not?
No, not. That's what. That's the bhakti. He's going to talk about that. So it's a good. That's why he said, "Are you Artha Bhakti?" In chapter 7, we saw all that. It said, "Artha Bhakti, where will it take you? Artha Bhakti, where will it take you? Jijnasa." So depending on he said. In fact, chapter 7 so beautifully he said, "You do whatever you want to do. I will give it back to you. So if you flatter me, I will give you what is worth of flattery." Whereas here he is going to say, "Patram pushpam palam toyam, ye bhaktya mam prayachati." Tat ashnami. There is a nice shloka, 26th shloka and 27th shloka in chapter 9. So it all, what is the spirit with which you are doing? Bhava and all that in chapter 8 we saw. So it all depends on what did you bring. It will take you there.
Then it's a mix of both, whether own effort plus divine blessing or only divine blessing.
No, your own effort only gets you the divine blessing. You can't say, this is saying that God is going to give you. One person was told in dream that God is going to give you all riches. He opened all the roof and you were sitting. Everything went away. I'll give you another nice story. Yeah, these stories are very jovial stories, but we can make you profound thing. There is one guru who actually told his Shishya that world is nothing but God. Matta parataram na anyadasti. He said all that, everything was over. They were walking into the forest. There was an elephant which was in an inebriated state coming. Elephant with mother coming. So that Mahoti was sitting on the tower and said, "Move away, move away." This guru immediately climbed a tree. This Shishya, just now the guru said the whole world is God. So he was there. This elephant really, took him. Fortunately, he didn't die. He had a massive fall. So he recovered after a week. First thing the Shishya asked is to the guru, "You said the whole world is God. Why did it happen?" He said, "You did not see, you saw God only in the elephant, not in the Mahot. Mahot also is God. I saw God everywhere. You couldn't see." So the point is, these concepts are to be drilled very deeply. Guru said, "Yes, I said the whole world is God. Did you not see God? God was advising you, get away. Why did you miss it?" So we are not evolved. So our effort is very important. Our effort will be matched. He says all that. In this chapter, a little bit we will see. So, when does one get Shraddha? You have to address all these. These are to be addressed not as a matter of fact. It's not a knowledge. It should be a vijnana. We should have the anubhava of these ideas. God is ultimate, imperishable. I don't know how to get that anubhava. I get knowledge. I am very thorough in that knowledge. Middle of the night you wake me up, I will start chapter 9. That is of no use. That's only one step. World is temporary and illusory. Nitya anitya vastu viveka. This is very, very important. If somebody gets it, he gets Shraddha. More and more Shraddha. Picture becomes very clear for that person. Right? Dharma has to be protected at any cost. I'm giving a few ideas. There are lots of such things which make a belief system. A belief system is nothing but a bundle of these ideas on which Under no circumstances you will be able to compromise on this. I will give you a personal, see, chapter 13 I will talk about it. There are certain things when it becomes so ingrained in you, it doesn't require any of these sermons. These are automatic. How many of you, when you are so hungry, not eaten for 2 days, you are so hungry, you found a half-eaten banana leaf in a dustbin, how many of you jump and eat it? None of us. Why? It is this knowledge has become part of me. I don't need any more additional discussion on it. It is my natural response. That even if I die, I won't eat it. If I am destitute, I am mentally balanced, that's a different issue, because there I am not using my
Intellect.
So we have to get that level to this. Then the person develops Shraddha. It's a matter of degree. Slowly it can happen. Do we know it by experience and living through? That is what is called Shraddha. And Ashraddha, the contrast of this is people who are extremely worldly. We will see that much later in 2 chapters. Daivasura Sampat and Shraddha Traya Vibhaga Yoga. Chapter 17, first 4 slokas are very good. You see it anyway there. Very extremely worldly minded. I will have to do everything. There is this Charvakas. They say, Rinam Kritva Pibam Gritam. He says, on credit you eat ghee. Rinam Kritva Pibe, Gritam Pibe. That is a famous statement. Today we are pretty much living in that credit card culture. We paying, we'll see later. Some subprime crisis will come and make it even more different, but that is okay. Very worldly minded. He thinks all about being worldly. So, an entire worldly thing, chapter 13 is going to tell us they are all anitya. There's nothing nitya about it, yet we are so much bothered about it. The question is, don't be bothered too much about it. There's only a certain level of botheration allowed. We are jumping too much on it. The means have become end to us. The end has become means to us. It's a cross mapping. They are ashraddhas. Right? That's why the Hitopadesha, I say, dharmena hinaha, those who don't follow any dharmas, dharmena hinaha, pashubi samana, they are like animals. What differentiates from animals and human beings? Our ability to have certain code of conduct, a certain way of living, certain kind of restrictions in life, certain ways by which we can hold on to our indriyas a little bit. This is what Dharma Shastra is. Dharma Shastra is not a very weird, sadistic thinking. It refines you. It tests you and then refines you. So if you are not able to read, Pashubi Samana. We are like animals, is what Hitopadesha says. Then Shloka 4, 5 is not here, but this is exactly what we found in 12th Shloka in chapter 7, where he said, Natu aham teshu te mai. Anyway, same idea he is saying here. He says, Maya tatam idam sarvam jagad avyakta murtina matstani sarva bhutani nacha aham teshu avastitah. So he is making a very nice statement here. You have to understand it carefully. He says, Maya, by me, sarvam jagat, this entire creation. Jagat is cosmos, not just world. Jagat is cosmos, which means there are so many solar systems which we are not even aware. We only know there is something called a Milky Way. He said, who created all this? He said, everything came from that source. I did it. That Abhyakta Brahman, right? He says, Abhyakta Murtina, right? Idam sarvam jagat maya. Then he says, that's the first sentence. Then he says, Matstani sarva bhutani. The place of residence for all those bhutas which are part of the jagat that I have created is in me. Matstani sarva bhutani na cha aham teshu avastita. I am not in them. See, this language you have to understand, this is different from our normal language. This language, this looks like conflicting. So let me explain this. Because I was today reading Swami Dayananda, there is a beautiful explanation of this. Take a golden chain. We say gold chain. Right? Now, the very fact we use the word gold chain, it looks like chain is the substantive part and gold is the common parlance, we understand it differently. But when you say gold chain, that means chain is the substantive part But then it's not like that. The gold is not added to the chain. In fact, the chain is part of the gold. Gold is not part of the chain. Gold has its independent existence. We are not, if you add gold to the chain, then you should call it gold-plated chain. Right? So this chain has not, it might have changed the shape. The gold must have changed the shape in the form of a chain. It has not added any additional gram or removed any additional gram. It is actually gold. The correct word to use is chainy gold. That's the correct word to use. Gold is the substantive part. Chain is a certain version or nama and rupa tag that we are given. The moment you say chainy gold, the idea is very clear. It is actually gold. It looks chainy now. That's the correct usage. We use the word gold chain. Basically what it means, it is chain on which I am seeing gold now. That's the wrong usage. That is what he is trying to say. He is trying to say that we are all humani Ishwaran. Something like that. The base substratum is that God particle. There is one version you see which is called Naras. Another version you call it as plant, animals, mountain, amoeba, Milky Way, sun, moon, whatever you call it. So all those have come from here. This is not there. That is only here. Gold exists. Gold is there. Gold will be there. Gold was there. It went through some changes. So the chain is in the gold. The gold is not in the chain. Understand the semantic of this language. Gold is not in the chain. The chain is actually in the gold which came out. The is part belongs only to gold, not to the chain. Please understand that. If you take the gold, where is the chain? If you take the cotton, where is this cloth? If you take the clay, where is the pot? So, the clay is not residing in the pot. The pot or thousands such 1 million different shapes and forms are all residing in what is called clay. There are 100 different varieties of, you go to all these advertisements, you see all kinds of gold ornaments. All these gold ornaments are resident in the gold. Gold is not resident in that. It's a semantically technical understanding. That's what he's saying. That's why he's saying, Matstani sarva bhutani. All the existence are in me. I am not in them. It came out of me. So, which means, I have an independent existence. Chain does not have an independent existence. Gold has an independent existence. Please understand. Chain does not, the shirt does not have an independent existence. How do you know it? Remove all the thread, there is no shirt after that. Remove all the gold, if there is a way, there is no chain after that. That is what he is saying. So he is saying, Aham teshu, na aham teshu avastitah means, I am not in them, they are in me. So it's a very technical word. This is again the connection between Jiva and Ishvara. He says Jiva is only a manifestation of the Ishvara. The Ishvara spins out in a particular way, you call it as the wave, the foam, the bubble. Everything is part of the ocean. The ocean is not there. It is in the ocean. Same idea. So that is exactly what he said in chapter 7 also. He said, Natu aham teshu. I am not in that. Te mai. They are in me. Same idea he is saying here. The point is, this is the superset, that is the subset. God and Ishvara is the superset. All these are temporary manifestations coming out. In fact, last class I was mentioning this. You destroy all items made of clay, you can bring all of them back to a form called clay. Now the question is, where did this clay come from? There is an inherent property of clay which brought clay. Where is that inherent property? Clay is an existential idea which came from something. And out of that certain things came. So we are talking about that ultimate root. So that is what he is saying, that I am the Adhisthana. All others are Aropita. I am the Adhisthana. Ishvara is the Adhisthana. All the names and forms and rivers and oceans and Milky Ways and people and all that, Nama, Rupa and Gunas are, that's why he used what's called Prakriti to bring that out. There are some technical implications. In chapter 7, little bit I said. See, when you have to create something, you need what is called Upadana Karana. You need some material. If you have to make a part, you need clay. First you need clay. You need 3. you need three things. First, you need a clay. Without clay, how can you make a pot, clay pot? That's called upadana karana. It's the material cause. Then there is an efficient cause. Somebody has to do it. It can be a machine or it can be a person. Nimitta karana. God is both upadana and the nimitta. He is the material and he is the efficient cause also. He is the material cause, he is the efficient cause. He brought everything out of him and brought it out. There are lots of technical discussions to clarify all this. It's upadana karana and nimitta karana. Everything is God. That's the idea. That's why white light is in Vibjar. Vibjar is in white light. This is not in that. That is on this. All aropitas are an adhisthana. That's the idea. Butter, curd, ghee and all the dairy products are all in milk. Milk is not in them. In common parlance we use a word like that. Technically speaking, this is not in that. All of them are in it, they are coming out. In a particular form and shape it is coming out. That's the idea. So God is like that. God is the adhisthana. This world of multiplicity that you see is aropita. It's just popping up in a particular, and that is the upadana karana and that is the nimitta karana also. It is the efficient cause and it is the material cause. That's how it is. Mundaka Upanishad it's a nice example it gives. It says the spider is both the nimitta karana and upadana karana. It spits its own saliva and weaves its own. That's the example it gives. So it has its own material, it is the efficient cause also. That is the example given in Mundaka Upanishad to explain this possibility. Then there are 4 shlokas in which he talks about the creation process. He gives a little more meat to it. 4 shlokas are, the first shloka 7 says, I am engaged in the act of creation. God says. How? It says, Sarva Bhutani Kaunteya Prakritim Yanti Mamikam Kalpakshaye Punastani Kalpado Visrijamyaham. When the kalpa ends, when the kshaya of the kalpa happens, I take everything in. And then kalpado visrijamyaham, I put it back. I hibernate everything and then reopen it again in the same state. Very similar process. So he says, all that I am doing. And I do through what is called Prakriti. That's what he is going to explain. Through that's why he said Para Prakriti and Apara Prakriti in chapter 7 itself. He introduced this concept. He said Mano, Buddhi, Ahankara, Chitta, all those are Ashtada, Prakriti Ashtada. Apara Prakriti, Yahi, Sarva Bhuto, Dharyate, Jagat Sarvam, all that he said. So he uses something called Prakriti. So the second shloka in this series says, I use Prakriti to do this act. All or nobody can escape the rule of Prakriti. So I now create a representative with which I am doing. So I create the nimitta. I also create the upadana. I also bring all the material, which is what he said anyway before. So I use the material, I bring my own representative and I create everything. So that's what he says. Prakritim swam avashtabhya. I latch on to what is called Prakriti. I create an entity called Prakriti. Prakritim swam, swayameva avashtabhya. Right? Visrijami purupanah. Again and again. This is how I create the world of multiplicity. From unmanifested state, how do I make manifested state? I create what is called Prakriti first. And because that Prakriti is what will bring Guna, Nama and Rupa. I put on equation in chapter 7 if you remember. Sat, Chit plus Ananda plus Nama plus Rupa plus Guna is the world. So the second part is Prakriti, the first part is Purusha. It's a God particle. This is the efficient cause, this is the material cause, through that you manufacture. That's the idea. So he says, Visrijami punam punaha. What? Krishnam bhuta gramam imam. Krishnam means everything. Bhuta gramam. Gramam means actually a cluster, a bundle or a set. That's why it's called gramas. They're all nearby, villages. So you use the word grama. Grama is a cluster. He says all bhutas. It never said naras. It said all that which you have seen in this world, Krishna. Through Prakriti I did, and it said avasham Prakriti Vasha. All of us are subjected to the laws of Prakriti. No Vasha, avasha. Vasha is I have control. It's paravasha. And the para is Prakriti. So avasham Prakriti Vasha. I have become helpless and this divine law called Prakriti, Maya, another word is called Maya, through which I started creating this world of multiplicity, in which I pulled the God particle, created forms and shapes. So second shloka. Then look at the third shloka. He says, I am not affected by the act of Prakriti due to my neutrality and non-attachment. That's the third point he makes. He says, Nachamam tani karmani nibadnanti. It doesn't tie me. This activity does not make me emotional or I get attached to it. I get involved into it. The moment you get involved into it, you cannot be at your best. This is a simple management principle. If you can stand away and do something, that's the best thing to do. It's very hard to do. Nibadnanti, na nibadnanti, na mam tani karmani, all these work that I described, all those work will not bind me. Why? He says, udasinavat asinam. I am like a very disinterested person. I stay out and watch it. I just stay out. I don't get involved into it. Udasinavat asinam asaktam teshu karma. That's why I become asakta. So the moment you get involved, sooner or later things can go wrong. And this is the act of leadership. The act of leadership is ask people to do and take your hands and stand and see. It's not at all easy. Very difficult. You get, because you have power, everything, first thing you do is get into it. And, then you get very emotional. You can go whichever ways. We do not know. That's the third thing he says. And then the last thing he says is Prakriti works under my presence and supervision. So he says, Maya adhyakshena Prakriti suyate. This Prakriti creates what? Chara and achara. Moving, unmoving, name anything. The whole thing is done under my supervision. Okay? And hetu anena hetuna kaunteya jagat viparivartate. This is how this world of multiplicity of the jagat has come. So he describes the whole creation process in four. To me, there are four very important management principles. There are four management principles here. If an act that we can do this, you have to get engaged. How do you get engaged? He says, don't get emotionally engaged too much into it. If you get emotionally too engaged into it, it's not going to be a great work. Looks like that's what he's saying. That's the third thing he said. Because the moment you get too much affected by the act, there is a chance that the whole thing slips one way or the other. It's very hard to practice it. But he says, get engaged, get somebody to do it, subordinate somebody to delegate to someone, stay out and see. Let them do. Let them do is not easy. No leadership lessons nowadays, because there are some kind of servant leadership, spiritual leadership, that they are talking similar things. Otherwise, leadership theory is all about power, control, authorization, I have everything. Still was majority thinking like that. And he says, under my presence and supervision. So here what he says is, I am doing and I am not doing. Both he is saying. It's not at all contradicting. You know why? Because I say I build the house. I never take bricks and concrete and cement and build, but I still say I build the house. What do you mean? That means Maya adhyakshena it is happening. I provided the vital thing required for building the house. I provided the fund. I authorized the plan. I let you do, and whenever you ask for money, I gave. That is why I can take credit and say I did. Now I also didn't do because I did not really get in. There was some architect, there was one mason, there were some helping boys, there was a carpenter plumber who did that. Something like that is coming here. So it is perfectly okay to say, I did it but I didn't do it. Day to day I will say that. I said I was clocking 60 miles, you are not clocking. The gas was clocking actually. But you did it because you are also doing something there. We can talk at two levels.
Ambition to create, because an ambition feels like there is some kind of a goal. But then how do we understand the purpose of creation?
No. I think there is a desire to create.
There is
desire to create, but then I don't get into how of it into a nitty-gritty.
So Krishna has the desire to create.
Although it has not come explicitly in Bhagavad Gita here, but in all Upanishads I was just saying, it suddenly became desire to say, let us marry. That's one way to understand it. Second is the desire, even there it has come here. Because it has come here actually, if you see. The desire is not a selfish desire for me, it is a desire to run the order of the Dharma. In that sense, see, as a CEO, I do things not out of my personal desire, actually speaking. I have a desire. And what is the desire? This stability of what is the stated thing must go forward. That kind of a desire. So that's why he said, Punastani kalpado srijameham kalpakshaya, I take it out. That desire. The desire is to desire to maintain the larger principle of Dharma as it goes. That kind of a desire. But having taken that desire, how do we do it? This is a question which we can still inquire into. It's another part of it.
Is there a place in Gita where we understand the purpose of creation?
There is no creation, it's only projection. There's no creation.
So, that's one thing. That this so-called creation, this birth and death are all seeing whether you are looking at an ocean or you are looking at a wave or are you looking at that spongy white foam or you look at a bubble. If you operate from the point of a bubble, it looks like there is a whole destruction going on and a recreation happening. So actually these are vocabularies we are using because otherwise we don't know how to connect it. That's why the larger thing is also being told again and again. So it is a certain way of, that's why in chapter 2 itself he said, Abhyaktani cha bhutani madhyavakthani bharata. He said, don't understand it like, but that's all change management ideas which came in chapter 2 also. He says, don't look at it like that. It is a certain manifestation and manifestation. So then there is a lot of these issues of motivation, all those are submerges into the argument, actually. No, actually, that is where the whole ideal of bhakti is brought in. Bhakti says, you do it for the sake of belief in that God and godly things. You start doing things. You do like that. So the only argument that is being made in many ways, we will see it. The more and more we align ourselves to it, these divine forces will, whatever you will go through, we will have to go through in life. Because the principle of prarabdha and sanchita karma and agami karma, God is not like a politician who will give you a favor just because you are very nice to him or you are very genuine to him. The universal dharma can never be escaped. Now the question you can ask is, can we make it easy to take it? Can we create conditions which appears favorable when I went through those challenging times in my mind? That is where the Bhagavad Kripa, how it comes? It comes from the purity of bhakti. It comes from that realization that the whole world is nothing but this creation of God, and let's partake in it in that spirit. Then the Bhagavad Kripa comes and it makes things a lot more favorable to us. People experience it like that. That's where it comes. There is no way, I keep saying this very strongly, there is no way we are going to be put into a shortcut and many things which we are supposed to go through will all taken away. It will never happen. But we will go through with a lot of mental strength. Unexpected quarters of helps will come. I was giving an example of an accident that happened in family. I was giving this example. The moment this boy fell on a massive accident, one doctor and one empty ambulance came. Why did it come? It need not have come. And he must have died exactly in 20 minutes if we had delayed him reaching the hospital. He reached in 18 minutes. They put him on a massive ventilator and he survived. Why did it happen? Now science cannot answer, rationality cannot answer. That missing variable is called epsilon in regression, unexplained variance. Unexplained variance is bhakti and kripa actually. It's a great deal of, R square will be 0.2 or 0.3 in life. The rest are all unexplained variance. That comes through it. And it is a belief system, by the way. That's called Shraddha. You should believe in it. And, it's my system. I don't have to really, argue with you. You can say, I don't believe on it, perfectly fine. I believe in it, perfectly fine. We can have our, that's why these are all very personal. Pratyaksha avagama, all these are. My understanding is like that.
So one more thing is this question of why, when, all this will come because of the finite nature of the world. When the mind starts to become infinite, this time, space, this cause, all these things will vanish. And that is a matter of realization.
Yes, that is very true. Only in a finite, when you become nirupadika, see, when you are upadika, when you are constrained by upadis, then lots of these questions are making sense. The more and more we are able to see ourselves as nirupadi, questions will also melt. That's why Anadi and Ananta is the greatest, wonderful assumption in Vedanta. Moment you say that your existence is neither an Adi nor an Anta, then these period by period boundary conditions don't mean anything to me. Birth and death mean nothing to me. If you believe in this, that it is a frame which is continuously running. So we are not so much bothered about where is this frame now, we are bothered about the trajectory now. You don't even want to know where we are reaching. They are all very academic discussion kind of a thing. So many of these may melt there. Kind of a thing can happen. So in fact in chapter 8, I showed you a lot of numbers. I showed you 10 power, all that very big numbers and all I showed you when he talked about creation and so on. In Puranas it is there. And here he talked about why are you doing all these discussions. My own reading is this has a lot of purpose. Why all this creation process must be understood because that will make us as small as it is. It is not to belittle us. Belittling is different. Making us small. That's why in South Indian temples, I keep saying this again and again. Please go into a temple which has a 150 feet tall tower with a ceiling which is about 40 feet. Please walk through it once. You don't even want to go to the temple. As you pass through that base of the tower, I will be surprised if you don't say I felt small. That's why all great institutions, I say that IIM Bangalore also has it. If you enter into IIM Bangalore through one of the 2-3 entry points here, the ceiling will be 40 feet. You just go and check. That's why main entrance in the reception, it's a high ceiling and then it drops. The fire drops later. You come through the, this or this north-south pergola, this amphitheater, tall ceiling. You go to the main building, Indian Institute of Science, you go to IIT Madras, the ESP, BSP and the MSP, you just see the ceiling. Feeling small is not belittling. It will actually is an important medicine to cut our hunger. You start thinking, who am I? That feeling will come if you are put like this. These descriptions have that purpose also. You have to understand you are a speck of a dust in that perspective. Why? Because lots of these things can happen. While we engage in the thick of activities, we will understand why are we jumping up and down? We have a very small role, actually speaking. I keep saying I am not even sure whether I will cross the road. I am not at all pessimistic. I am very wisely telling. I am not sure whether I will cross the road or not. So don't worry too much. Take all your precautions. Don't have udasina. But understand that's all life is. He says, Adi Shankara says, Vidyutchalam Jeevitam. He says, it's like lightning your life goes. For everyone. Greatest doctor will also have to, life has to go like this. There is nothing it can stop. What I am saying is, that can put us in perspective. We are putting everything onto our head. We are creating so much of mess on us. When we think we are too big, we have to sort out things. Please sort out things as saying, I am one of these thousands of wonderful creations. Man cannot create anything. We use the word create very, very wrongly. We can only recreate. Tell me one thing that man has created. He has used what nature has created and recreated. Tell me one thing that man has created. Did man create iron? Did man create sand? Did man create a particular flower with there are millions of colors of flowers. Who created all that? You can use it and recreate something. You can make a photograph, you can make a bouquet. You can make a very interesting business model out of it. Man can only recreate. Man can create nothing. That is why it is only Paramatma which can create. Jivatma can make use of it. So these descriptions are meant for it. We should be awestruck by this nature and this creation. Creation has to be a matter of something which is matter of great awe for us. So that will cut our ahankara a little bit. That's the purpose with which I see this also, in addition to many other purposes. So it is all to say we should be struck by this wonder. Please reflect on, you see a very nice new insect, a new flower, you must reflect on it. You must say, what a great creation. Who has created this? What is that force which found such a combination of colors which came out? We can take some ideas from it and create a fine arts. Man can only recreate it. This whole 6 billion different living organisms and such a beautiful harmony in which they are living, which we are trying to disturb now through our technological progress, is a creation which is beyond any mortal entity's imagination, slightest imagination. That is how we have to understand the creation process. So we develop a sense of humility, begin to see and experience it. That is how the interconnectedness will come. How is this interconnectedness going to come? We should be able to relate to these beautiful things happening around. I am awestruck by this nature of every time there is a lightning and there is a drizzling, first thing that goes to my mind is my thermodynamics pops up. I say, an open room, I cannot cool it 5 degrees even after 10 hours of running big gigantic ACs here. Whole of city comes down by 5 degrees in an open system. This closed system, do you know how much time will it take to bring this temperature down by 5 degrees? You need at least about half an hour, 2-3 hours of 5-6 big ACs running here. There is this nature called rain. In about 5 minutes, whole of city comes down by 6 degrees. Please understand, get awestruck by the nature. Can you put one tube light or one technology, whatever technology you can use, by which you can actually light the whole of Bangalore? That's what a lightning is doing. There is no way you can match any of that anywhere near. We will be actually paling in comparison. That we have to reflect. Then we begin to see the connection. Oh, this is what God is. So I don't see God elsewhere. You see here, this is God. This is God. And see God in people. There are extraordinary people. That's why he said, Balavam, Balavatam Asmi. Look at shlokas 7 to 11 in chapter 7. Great shlokas. Tejas Tejasvinamaham Balam Balavatam Asmi. Balam Balavatam Asmi is not with the revolvers and bodyguards. That's not Balam. Balam is there is so much inside. Go and sit in Jantar Mandar, some 10 million people in India will run up and down and then fight for a cause by one person just with a white cap goes and sits. That's called Bala for me. That's what Winston Churchill called as a half-baked fakir, got independence for this country. That is the expression of Bala. Read my experiments with truth, read the complete works of Swami Mahatma Gandhi, 6 volumes are there. You will understand what is Balam. Not the modern day politicians, Z security and a lot of revolver people. That's not Balam. And what is Tejas Vinamaham? Vivekananda goes to the Parliament of Religions and says, dear brothers and sisters of America, I believe everybody is falling flat. You and I go and say, dear brothers and sisters, I say, get lost. Because Tejas is not that. That's called Tejas. Tejas is something which is flowing and attracting. It is all divine forces. See divinity in every spot like that. There are lots of divinity in each one of us if we know how to see it. So all these discussions must lead us there. Must take us to this concept called creation is the greatest thing on which to reflect upon. Which is what Krishna is saying, because bhakti won't come otherwise. We will pull down everything, we will say all these are useless, I am the greatest person, because of me all these people are there. This is telling a different story. He says, I am behind everything, understand that. And we can very intellectually understand it and experience it. First understand intellectually, reflect on it, look around, then start experiencing it. That's where the bhakti will come. So I think we will stop here. It's already 7:31. So we will continue next class.